So now that chapter 23 has been officially released, let's break down the question that everybody has right now. And that is, has Kawaki surpassed current Boruto? And this question has sparked a lot of debates in the community as of right now, as there are various camps, those of Boruto and those of Kawaki. But in this video, we'll be breaking down the answer to this question, as although we haven't seen Kawaki fight for too long against Jura, there is a definitive answer to this question, or at least a conclusion that the authors are drawing towards. So to begin the analysis of this question, we first have to analyze just how well Boruto did against Jura. So to start off the analysis of Jura versus Boruto, we first have to understand that throughout most of the fights that we have seen Jura partake in, he is not going all out. As of yet, we haven't seen Jura go all out against any opponent. The same went for Himawari, where we literally see him chilling fighting Himawari, and then slowly he sees something interesting with Himawari that causes him to want to draw a little bit more of his power. It is the same principle here, as in the beginning of the fight between Boruto and Jura, we have Boruto who has been shown to be relative to Jura's attacks, and most of it, especially his Biju Bomb, which we'd get an explanation as to why that is the case, as there is a necessary activation time for that jutsu for it to fully load into a Biju Bomb before Jura can actually shoot it out, and using that, Boruto is able to react to pretty much all of Jura's Biju Bombs, making that the reason why we see Boruto not be hit by any of Jura's Biju Bombs. So when it comes to that, we have already seen how Boruto can already navigate the Biju Bombs, but we have a reason why that is the case, and that is the activation time. Boruto first starts off the fight versus Jura by landing a Rasengan on him, a Rasengan that we can clearly see Jura being aware of, but he does end up tanking it, and by him tanking that Rasengan, we don't see Jura take any damage. When we compare this Rasengan to the one that Boruto was able to land on Hidari, we did see in Hidari's case that he did take some damage from a regular Rasengan, but when it comes to Jura, this clearly isn't even the case. And even with the additional force that is applied on Jura's body, Jura is still capable of turning around and firing a Biju Bomb of his own, clearly indicating that the Rasengan didn't do much to Jura, as he is capable of quickly turning around and using a Biju Bomb of his own. Boruto's main method of getting away from most of Jura's attack has been this teleportation ninjutsu, and we have seen that when he does end up using it against Jura, Jura can clearly react to Boruto's teleportations, as we can note in chapter 22. Jura does take damage from Boruto's attack when we see him use his sword, but that is the only way in which we have seen Boruto be able to damage Jura, and that is using his sword. Using his Rasengan, we have already seen that it is pretty much not effective, and when we do come to understand with the Uzuhiko, although it began by being effective as he was feeling the centrifugal forces of the earth, and his head was practically spinning, like we saw versus Code, however, not only did the Rasengan itself not damage Jura at all, but Jura was clearly able to nullify those abilities, and as Kash and Koji stated, Boruto was done for at that moment, as there was nothing he could really do. Now when it comes to some of the jutsus that did land on Boruto, we see that one of the most effective ninjutsu, apart from Jura using his taijutsu, it was him using wood style. And when he does end up using wood style, although initially Boruto was capable of reacting to them, the more and more Jura ended up using those moves, we started to see that Boruto had trouble reacting to that wood. And then it eventually led towards Boruto being caught, meaning that it's a lot easier for Jura to catch Boruto using wood style compared to his Biju Bombs, as they likely move faster and don't have this activation period as the Biju Bombs have shown to have. And this is what caused Boruto's initial injury that did end up costing him the fight and causing him to eventually end up losing. We do see in the next chapter that Boruto does mention that it did hit him, but it missed his vital spots. And one thing that is quite important to note when it comes to Jura's fight versus Boruto is that throughout this entire fight, we see Jura with his hands in his pockets, just showing how much he doesn't really view Boruto as a serious threat. The one time that we end up seeing Jura remove his hands from his pockets is when we do see Boruto get a lot closer, and then try use his knife to attack Jura. It is at that moment that we then get to see Jura use his hand to block, and that is always when Boruto is using his sword, as he would have nothing else to block with apart from his arms, and he is still capable of reacting to Boruto after he ends up using his teleportation ninjutsu, the Flying Raijin. And when they get close to each other, although we do see that Boruto is capable of reacting to Jura's moves, and after reacting to one of Jura's moves, which he ended up trying to pierce him using the claw marks around his finger, that left him wide open for an attack that resulted in Jura losing his legs. And that is when we do end up seeing Jura say that this is impressive. We don't see Jura react in a way of pain, as we literally see when Kawaki ends up spearing his Rinnegan, he doesn't react in any sort of pain. So we're not going to use this panel to say that, oh, Jura is feeling pain due to the attack that Boruto has used. If he didn't feel pain from Kawaki using the Rinnegan, I doubt that whatever Boruto is doing in this case is going to cause him to feel pain. But it is at that moment where Jura ends up noticing how strong Boruto's attack was, and the sequence was pretty impressive. Then we see Jura try a little bit more, and when he does so, we see that Boruto immediately notices that he is outmatched in strength. And then he gets grabbed by Jura, and if Boruto didn't end up using the purple lightning then, it would have been lights off for Jura. And after that sequence, Boruto is out of it, and from then on, we just see a Boruto that is dominated and almost killed if Kawaki didn't join the fight. So that's pretty much the analysis when it comes to base Boruto versus Jura. And this is all the strength that Boruto has been shown to be able to use currently, due to the fact that he can't tap into his karma because of Momoshiki. Now, where things get interesting is seeing Kawaki's own performance. And obviously, I'm not going to say that Jura was not caught off guard. He was definitely caught off guard. Most of the times that we see that a character was aware of an attack, we do see some sort of effect around the person's head to indicate that, oh, they were aware of that attack. And we're not going to say that Kawaki speed blitzed Jura, due to the fact that nobody was even aware that Kawaki would make an appearance, and Jura simply believed that he was going to take out Boruto. So he was too busy landing and preparing his attack to end up doing anything in that case. So he was not aware that Kawaki was there, and he also was not speed blitzed by Kawaki, meaning that the only thing that really happened here was Jura being caught off guard. But after that is where things get pretty interesting. We see that Kawaki is capable of reacting to Jura's moves without using the Flying Raijin. He is capable of activating his shrinking ability to dodge his attacks, and then he is capable of throwing attacks where Jura was shown to be able to react to, but he wasn't able to negate all of the various chakra rods that were thrown at him, as some ended up hitting Jura. And then Jura ends up throwing another attack towards Kawaki, and Kawaki, using his shrinking ability, is able to get away. So in this instance, we have Kawaki, who has landed a couple moves on Jura and has been shown to be able to react to Jura, who tried to attack him pretty close, even while most people would have believed that Jura was dead after landing an attack that hit his brain, but he wasn't, and wasn't phased by any of the attacks that Kawaki made. But Jura still didn't tag Kawaki, and Kawaki was able to dodge all of the attacks that Jura threw his way, and even get his chakra rods to pierce his stomach. And it is after that that we get something pretty interesting, which is essentially information confirming that Kawaki got his limiters removed, showcasing that he had an exponential increase in his power. And this is what Jura says exactly. He says, "How can this be? I sense in him exponentially greater strength than before." And this is comparing the Kawaki of before that he ended up fighting. So just from seeing this right here, we can deduce a few things. One thing that we can deduce is that Boruto and Kawaki, simply from this interaction, they should be relative bare minimum. And this is a Kawaki before he activates his karma. And going off this sequence, although we clearly see that Kawaki had less time to fight Jura in base compared to Boruto, so I'm not going to say that Jura couldn't end up doing the same thing that he did to Boruto to Kawaki. I'm not denying that possibility, but what I am saying is that from what we can see that Kawaki, just like Boruto, is clearly capable of reacting to Jura. And just like Boruto, Kawaki is able to damage Jura, not in a way that causes Jura too much effects or too much trouble or is a life-threatening injury, but it is still damage that he is capable of doing to Jura's durability. But one thing that is quite interesting is the great strength that Jura ends up noting to Kawaki. So at this current point, there are a few things that can be said. What is definitive is that they are at least relative. Now, who had the better performance? I would definitely go with Kawaki. And if you then deem that base Kawaki is stronger than Boruto, I wouldn't necessarily be against it. However, I would still view that there is not enough of a sequence between Kawaki and Boruto. After the fact that Kawaki already had the edge in the beginning of the battle due to catching Jura off guard, and then after that he had the momentum in that battle. So if you would then grant that momentum to say that Kawaki is stronger than base Boruto, you could go down that interpretation, but I still believe that to give me a hard yes, a hard definitive that base Kawaki is stronger than Boruto, I believe there's more evidence that has to be pointed towards. However, what I will say is that argumentation leans more towards Kawaki, and this Kawaki agenda that everybody is pushing has more favor than any argument or agenda that any Boruto fan could have for Boruto. Kawaki and Boruto are bare minimum relative, with more arguments being in favor with Kawaki for him to be stronger than base Boruto. Now, what I will say for sure is that Kawaki with the karma absolutely is stronger than Boruto, and it wouldn't even be a competition in my opinion, as we already know the amplification that karma does to somebody, and if Kawaki is to tap into version 2 karma, it's going to be an even bigger problem for Boruto. This is a Kawaki 2 that is not using the Kokugan at all. We haven't seen him use the Kokugan in that fight. So already just noticing that we have Kawaki who is in base but not using his strongest abilities, I still have to give it to Kawaki due to the simple fact that he could have simply shrank Jura's Biju Bomb and Jura wouldn't be able to use that as a way to attack, and there's just more arguments to be used for Kawaki to be stronger than base Boruto. So just even analyzing that and adding that to the topic, it grants more arguments towards Kawaki. So personally, you could say that they're relative and that would be fine. More arguments do end up leading to Kawaki being stronger in base, and we also have to take into consideration that Kawaki is about to use the karma and will definitely be stronger than Boruto when he uses the karma, even if it's just a normal one, and eventually in this fight he will end up using version 2 karma, and that is simply no debate, no contest between him and Boruto, and we're seeing that this does make sense. In the next chapter, we're probably going to understand a little bit more about the amplifications that Kawaki had made upon him, because we're already noticing here that Kawaki is being pushed to his limits. Kawaki has told Amado to basically push and amp him to the maximum possible, make him a monster, and that's essentially what we're seeing take place at this current moment, simply due to the fact of the amplifications, and most likely even Shibai cells that Kawaki probably had implanted in him to lead him to be this strong, and thus I would say that Kawaki has officially surpassed Boruto, and that's where my current line of interpretation does end up leading me towards. But the other interpretation of base Boruto and Kawaki being relative, if you simply want to stop there, I'm fine with that too, due to the simple fact that we didn't get too long of an interaction between base Kawaki and Jura, and Kawaki already had the momentum in this fight due to the way that he entered it and caught Jura off guard, in my personal opinion. So that's essentially the Kawaki agenda that is being pushed out right now. And to be 100% honest, it seems like that agenda is a lot better than the Boruto agenda, because right now, Boruto needs some sort of amp if he really wants to do anything more against Jura. Will it lead to Momoshiki? Will it lead to something else? We'll have to figure out in the next chapter. However, if you do want to know another factor that could play a part in this battle, you have to watch this video right here and figure out how Momoshiki could ultimately come and join this fight, making this fight even more interesting.